All right. Good evening, Rebel Faction. Your home for all things ethno nationalist, where naming the Jew is what we do. I have a very special guest tonight. We are joined by, sorry, I forgot to mute the monitor. We are joined tonight by the host of the podcast. This hour rather, has 56 minutes. Dan Man and Raphael. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us on.
Doing great as well, man. Thank you for having us on again. Or having me on
Yeah,
again, sorry.
no, it's always great to have you guys on. Yeah, our buddy Shark couldn't make it with us tonight, but that's okay. We weren't able to do our episode last week due to sound faux pas, so appreciate you if you're sticking with us tonight. But as you guys can see, I've entitled tonight's episode "NPC String Theory." I had another idea for an episode tonight, where I'd get in, the finer points of what we usually go into: economics, nationalism, good stuff like that. But I really wanted to strike the iron while this NPC thing was still hot, and better yet, I couldn't think of anybody better to tackle this topic with than Dan because I don't know. There's just a lot to do with it now that NPC, for those of you, I highly doubt anyone at this point wouldn't know what NPC is. Uh, is it non-programmable character? I'm sorry, I'm not a game weenie. Is that right, Dan?
Non-playable character.
Not non-playable, not non-pro, because obviously they're programmed. See, I knew I would fuck that up because I don't play video games. 30-year-old boomer status, I guess.
You were kind of like the same thing, like right? They're non same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so what what we've been observing a lot in the past couple weeks, and this NBC phenomenon has only been only been really in the forefront for it's not even 2 weeks, and it is doing gangbusters as far as memes go. I don't think I've seen a meme like rock the bedrock of a political landscape. They are freaking out about this one, and I've got some pretty interesting theories about why that might be. And they're most of them aren't solid theories. We're talking about like theories like a shower thought is a theory. But um yeah, so anyways, uh what are some of the complaints we're hearing out of the left as far as why it's dehumanizing, why it's somehow why is it a negative thing? Like, why did they take it so personally, you think?
Well, I think it's because it's a big improvement over the old meme where you used to call people sheeple. Like, sheeple, wake up! And it's just implying that all these people are dumb. But the NPC meme goes after even the smart people. And it's really just how they're programmed. How they don't even know they're programmed. They just have this set responses they give to anything people say that goes
It
off the grid.
Yep, it reminds me of that movie They Live with Roddy Piper. And like every time he puts on the glasses, like they turn into like these monsters or whatever. It's kind of like the same thing, but with the NPC, these people are kind of programmed in a way to kind of think, speak, and regurgitate exactly what the media and society puts on their plate, right? To just completely regurgitate it, just like they're programmed. I think it describes our society perfectly.
Yeah, it's been kind of weirding me out because I don't know how to. articulate this without making it sound bizarro or, I don't know, nostalgia ridden, but almost when I was younger, I feel like I had this conception for an idea of what an NPC would be because I don't know. This is where I was going to tell you that some of my NPC theory starts to sound like shower thoughts, but realistically, when you think about um, how many people there are in the world, and this isn't uh, just for talking about your interaction with people when it comes to running for a political office or what someone thinks of a popular TV show. I'm saying when you think about the giant landscape of the earth and consider that there's millions of people. Uh I don't know, it's almost dehumanizing, but I kind of always had this idea. Well, okay, well, let's take something like what we call above average intelligence. I have a I think you might have heard me say before, Dan. I've got this expression where I call it off the top, where it's a real easy way to think of like, okay, you have no idea how so many people cannot understand this. Well, off the top, you have to um, eliminate half the population just off of sheer IQ and aptitude. And then off the top, everybody who's got education to a certain level and so on and so forth. And so it's weird. I say that since the term NPC has found its way into the common everyday lexicon, it's it's really weirded me out because I think that that qualifier for what constitutes someone being an NPC is it can cover more than just someone who embodies a liberal mindset. Um, Shark would probably be fond of saying that um, magapeds are probably a prime example of a NPC.
Yeah, I agree. I think magapeds are like the conservative D'Souza types. You know, I think that they are also they just don't know it. They're using these memes too, right? But they don't know that they are actually part of that actual meme itself too, right?
Yeah, what really pisses me off is when they complain about Antifa, and they always say Antifa are the real Nazis, but they're not Nazis; they're communists, right? Why don't they just say Antifa or communists? They should. It would be more accurate.
Yeah,
They're part of the line of thought, right? Like the neoconservatives too. All these type of people, they fall into this category as well, but yet they don't know, that they fall into the category of the conservatives that try to get the base black guy, Jason Kessler's, for example. There. Memphis, did we lose you?
no, I'm still here. I was.
Yeah, I think we lost you actually.
Did you guys lose me?
I think we all lost each other.
We lost each other,
Dan, and then he just cut off completely.
Oh, yeah. Was I not showing up in the?
No, I just didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anybody. So maybe I broke up. I don't know.
I don't know. It's a mystery, but you're back now. That's the important thing. All right, but yeah. As far as you want to tell me what the last bit you said about the NPC bit you cut out on my end. So just tell me like.
No, yeah, I was just saying basically, like the Jason Kesslers of the world, that the base black guy or whatever, the Hispanic guy that he has to have next to him. Those are NPCs as well. Like those people, they just, like I said, like I was just repeating, they're just kind of they don't know it either.
Yeah, and okay, so all that being said, it's like I really wonder how deep it goes. It's like how complex a let's see. What would we call it? Like your belief portfolio, if you will. Like how complex and consistent a belief portfolio could you have and still be an NPC and just be kind of touting lines. I think that's probably one of the definitive points where people start to break away from libertarianism, NPC dumb, I guess I could call it. NPC dumb.
Well, I guess the way that I see it is it's kind of like a barometer, right? Like there's people that are, because in a sense, like I could say that like in a way that we all in some way are NPCs in a way, right? Because we all are part of the society. We all do regurgitate. None of us come up with our ideas originally, right? We always get our ideas from others, right? The people that I really don't consider like the real NPCs are people like I don't know, Carl Menger, the Austrian School of Economics, people like Julius Evola. I definitely think that he's not an NPC. Like people that come up with original thought by themselves, like or something new, something that hasn't been seen in the world before. In a sense, like if I put this barometer, we would be in the bottom portion, right? Like, then the top portion would be the people that would be like in that listen to CNN, NBC, and all this stuff, right? Like regurgitate the same talking points. Democracy is our strength. Racism is bad. That type of stuff. I think that those type of people would be the top of like this barometer, but we would be on the bottom of it, right? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, essentially, nobody has completely original ideas. I mean,
This is true.
everybody repeats talking points they hear because sometimes they just a better way of giving out information than we could do on our own.
Right, but I kind of like these philosophers and people like that, right? Like they come up, yeah, they take ideas from them, but they also create their own ideas too, which completely changes the way society is in a sense, with their creative thoughts, and that I think is like the ultimate like breakaway from NPC, like the ultimate, like that they wouldn't be considered. That's just my opinion,
Yeah, I told you guys in pre-chat that I had this kind of bizarre theory about NPCs in a way that I wanted to try and pitch to make people think of them in a different light. Kind of what I was saying with how you can have a Magapede NPC, but I pitched this to you guys to chew on a little bit during intro, but I was thinking about it the other day, and it, like I said, shower thoughts. Shower thoughts is the theme of these ideas because I don't want them to get blamed for anything else. But I think you could make a strong case for something to the effect of like Elon Musk is just a really high functioning NPC. And I was thinking about it and why I kind of like believe this. It's pretty rare. Okay, so Trump, I don't think Trump had like Elon Musk money early on in his life, and they came from completely different fields, obviously. And obviously Musk is way smarter, but the thing is you can see like if you watch the Joe Rogan interview, Elon Musk is obviously super rich, super smart, but the dude is so type B that he seems to be able to make conclusions, but it's almost like I don't know. I just think there's something even autopilot on it. There doesn't seem to be any animated emotion out of him. And I'm not saying he's the only example. I'm thinking that this idea of an NPC is something that if we took it and we applied it as a lens to a lot of other parts in our lives, we I think it would give us an ability or even a tool to kind of vet people for um, positions, appointments better. Um, because it just seems like something people have lost the ability to discern uh, in the recent years.
Well, I believe Elon Musk is as soon as he started smoking podcast, the stock went on. So the stockholders definitely saw that, and a sense of pressure from Joe Rogan and smoking, and you don't want your CEO of a company smoking pot. Not a good thing.
Why Joey Roggins always make everybody smoke a little devil's lettuce?
But yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah, if you want like more of an original thought or someone that has different thought processes, then the rest of the common man, as you could say, or as William Pierce would say, the lemmings. You know, the NPC is kind of like a guy. Like there would be probably like a standardized way of figuring out if this is like kind of like the common man, right?
Right. Uh, and well, sad
That's
thing, it's
IQ. That's IQ usually, right?
oh, what say again?
Oh, the usually yeah, like could make the difference, right? Because but it's illegal for employers to use IQ test on employers, right? Or potential employees.
Right,
I don't
right.
think.
Yeah, it could have a application. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I don't think the idea of NPC is all that bad because that's kind of you need those type of people for a society to function. The type of conformist people who will also make other people conform to whatever their social norms are. They're the glue that keeps society together. It's just right now there's people that are messing up with their programming and they're making society conform to things that are very destructive in the long term.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's also true. I think like not everybody's supposed to be a rocket scientist. It's okay to have people who uh I mean, like I said off the top, 50% of your society is going to be simpletons. And should you got to take care of your NPCs. They just they shouldn't really be in charge of anything is my only point. Unless they're Elon Musk. Elon Musk
What?
NPC.
Go. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I was like, if you're Elon Musk, you do what the fuck you want. You're the retard strength NPC.
I guess you could say that he's might probably be the special exception, right? Even though he did make, I think, a big error in smoking pot and being a CEO, you don't see
Oh, that was
going and
he didn't even inhale.
smoking pot.
You
It
know
didn't
what?
look like it, but
Did you hear the theory about why he did that?
no, I haven't heard it.
Well, some people think that when he essentially kind of like shorted his own stock and then like I think he bought a bunch of his own shares like a couple days after that and got a bunch of shit for it because they were like, "Oh, this motherfucker, he couldn't he wasn't allowed to take his company private." So he goes on Joe Rogan, um smokes some pot, his shares go down, and then he buys up a bunch of his own shares. It's fucking genius, man. I don't think I can't
Oh,
remember if that's exactly how it went down, but he got a whole bunch of shit around the same time. That I didn't pay attention to it because number one, uh everybody, anytime something happens in the news, this is one thing that just kind of annoys me as a finance junkie or an economics nerd, whatever, semi nerd. It always irks me in the news when people see um people say, "Oh, this company's stock tanked and it cost them this much money." I mean, yeah, stuff like that can affect sentiment on a day-to-day basis, but man, those things are so controlled and leveraged. Like if you understood how once you understand how it works, but most of those companies make back every single dime they ever lose off of a PR stunt. The only thing that's like different, like Nike's stock taking a hit because of uh Trump magapeds boycotting or burning their stuff, and they can get the shit to go down for like a day, and then it recovers. It just keeps on going exactly the way it was. Stuff like that, public outstanding retail stocks and all of the like, they don't really get affected by stuff like that. Um, markets, markets like the NFL that actually depend on like seasonal tickets and seasonal subscriptions, stuff like that can be affected heavily. But it's a very common misconception that people think stocks can take big hits out of PR. They can, just not to the effect people usually think they do.
Yeah, and it just shows that Nike had to know doing a stunt like that with Colin Kaepernick was going to piss off a lot of their customers, but they were more concerned of pushing a narrative across than making money.
Well, they probably made their money. Probably need some of it back. Maybe some people doubled down and they just bought more stock, right? Like as soon as they saw the dip, it's like, oh, this is an opportunity to buy. You know, that's usually when people see that there's a dip. They usually that's usually a signal to them, at least for the market in the past couple of years, that it's a signal to buy, and they just buy up more of the stock because they anticipate it going up, even after bad news.
Yeah, I mean, but even then, did you guys watch the whole interview at all, or like pieces of it?
No, I just saw the highlight of him smoking pot.
Yeah, that's about it.
Dude, the actual interview is trippy. I would actually like it really is worth watching because man, it's really bizarre when you watch um watch just how the guy interacts, and you're just aware of he's so fucking smart. It's retarded. It's it's
Well, I
bizarre.
think. Go ahead.
Well, in the interview, there's a meme that like circulates around, and it's making fun of the interview because it's like here you have the smartest, like pretty much the smartest man in the world sitting down, and pretty much says that the entire way we're living life on Earth is unsustainable. We should, think about, trying to ascend to the stars. Pretty much admits to being an alien like twice in the interview. Um, and like just drops all this awesome knowledge, and then people the end of the bottom of the meme says, and what people take from this is, ha ha ha, dude, space, weed.
Well,
So he admitted he was an alien on that show. You sure it wasn't more than just spot he was on?
No, it was essentially just making fun of the way like his demeanor. Oh yeah, and during the interview he warns us about AI like 6 different times and says that like it's the worst idea ever. And
I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah, I don't see AI as being a
yeah,
particularly good
you've got
thing.
to I would highly recommend watching it, man. It's bizarre. It's like halfway, like it's so bizarre that you watch it and you've got to be wondering if he's like a shill or if he's, you know, or if he's acting, just because there's nobody in the world who acts like that guy.
Right. Yeah. One of the thing I could think about is like if he's talking about going to the stars, he does receive a lot of government funding, so he does have an incentive to want to have people to go demand to send us to the stars. You know what I mean? Because the more dough he could get more money from the government, it could help SpaceX finance its mission without putting a dime down, right? Or less expenses towards them. So I could see that being an incentive for him. Um, Calling for that type of stuff.
Dude, I'm honestly, I'm on a since finding the movement, I'm all about it. Honestly, I don't care if Elon and Jeff Bezos, I don't care if they own the country. If I have like, if I can have like a brand new knee joint Amazon primed or droned to my cabin in the woods, and take a luxury flight to Mars or the moon. I mean, if we could get, it's like man, who is it? If we I can't remember who I stream with that says this, but it's like, yeah, you get rid of the Gibbs, like, yeah, let's go to the stars, up and out.
Oh yeah, I could see that. I mean, yeah, so like instead of giving welfare to oh, there's actually isn't there a meme with the black lady that actually says like, oh, they're spending money on space but not feeding my children or something like that? Have you guys seen that by any chance?
Yeah, yeah. Or the or have you seen the one where it's the car with the exit and it's whipping a hard like 180 to go off the exit at the last minute? You know that
No, I
meme?
haven't seen that one. I never seen
Yeah,
that one.
Where it's where the exit is ascending to the stars. No, well, no, to go straight is like Faustian Dream, ascend to the stars, and then you see the car like it just fishtails last second to go to the exit, and it says the car is the US and the exit is subsidizing third world people who can't uh take care of themselves.
yeah. I've actually heard on Paul Kersey, the guy that runs stuff black people don't like. He mentioned that the space program, NASA program, really took a nosedive because of the huge affirmative action programs that we put in place, trying to get blacks into NASA. Because a lot of black people were complaining that we were spending money on the NASA program and not enough money on welfare programs. So it's an interesting take that we allowed a lot of less qualified people to go into NASA, and that's why we couldn't go farther than the moon. We could only that's the last biggest thing we ever did was put somebody on the moon. Couldn't put anybody on Mars or anything after that.
You know,
Got
it's
to give me
also
the Gibbs. Got to get the Gibbs.
yeah, you know what's also common knowledge that they just slipped in nowadays that okay, see, when I was graduating and the recession was hitting because the housing crisis and all that shit. Um what remember how when it happened back then it was just very generic reasons for it was interest rates and fancy finance jargon and market bubbles and subprime loans and it, they made it like it was this super complicated thing.
Right.
Nowadays, what I'm hearing, and I didn't know this, so if you guys have known this for a while and are like laughing at me, go right ahead. But I've got nowadays when like I've had a couple professors reference the housing crisis, and it seems to be the common knowledge now that it was yes, it was subprime loans. It was people getting loans who shouldn't have been getting loans, but they're saying it was essentially affirmative action for loans, trying to uh secure mortgages to people who uh based essentially on a metric of affirmative action. And I don't even know if that's true, but it's been something I wanted to go because I understand what a subprime mortgage is. All those people default on their shit, but I wasn't aware that they just kind of conveniently slipped it back in and been like, "Oh yeah, well, it was because they were trying to secure and guarantee mortgages to people of color and people in low income neighborhoods." I don't know. You guys heard anything on that?
Well, yeah, I've heard that that banks were lending did lent to minorities due to the fact that they felt that credit scoring and all this type of stuff was racially racially against them in a sense. And yeah, absolutely, these type of things. If you let's say if you were to give to lift a barrier for kids to have loans on homes, and with no money or anything like that, then you would have a housing boom as well. And then the housing boom, when they can't pay it back, it would come to a bust.
Well, I heard the what's it called, the Community Reinvestment Act, where too many minorities were being denied for loans, and the banks had to figure out a way to include more minorities in their loan portfolios. Otherwise, they'll get like a fine.
Yeah, it was just surprising to me. I mean, because I was taught, not so much taught, but like I learned about what it was. But now that it's 10 years after the fact, and it's just kind of convenient and it's okay because there's distance between it. Now people don't have a problem admitting it was Gibbs. This giant bailout and this huge fuck up was a result of Gibbs. But they had us believing it was just regular regular people who just could not carry their own mortgage, so to speak.
Yeah, and it was also a combination of Alan Greenspan lowering interest rates as well, which spurs that type of puts that money into areas such as real estate, stock markets, areas like that. Well, because when you have extra creation of cash, that cash has to go somewhere, and it usually goes into those areas.
Yeah, it goes into the coffers. It goes into those banks who buy those houses up wholesale, and then they
yeah, they're the first receivers of the money, right? The banks, the member banks, right? They're the first ones that get it.
Yeah.
And then from there, you start creating these.
Their debts are absolved, and they just put more, and all those assets that they're under on, they just put on the books, bought and paid for.
Yep. So,
and by the time, and here's the thing, so just by like they tell us the housing boom was for bullshit, and at end of the day, pretty much what they've admitted 10 years later is yep, it's the majority white population subsidizing the default homing market of minorities. Sorry. And by the time the next generation of kids who are 18 years old right now, they're going to go through 4 years of college that's going to indoctrinate them and it's probably going to, if you go to college, it probably puts another like 5 to 6 years on the amount of time it will take you to learn the stuff to make your economics not suck, I guess, is a simple way of putting it.
Well, yeah, and the type of economics that they teach is going to be usually the contrary, right, to what I've and probably yourself I've studied, which is they're going to teach it. I'm sorry.
I said, yeah, the Keynesian school.
Yeah, Keynesian school of economics, which they're gonna teach them, that the government needs to get involved, and they need to pump money into the economy to keep the economy growing, et cetera, right? And this type of behavior is exactly what leads to economic booms, which eventually come down to economic bust eventually. So this is the perfect theory, is in my opinion, for this, is the Austrian business cycle theory, which is amazing to describe the current situation. And I think the current situation that's going to be facing us sometime soon in the near future.
Yeah.
So I hear Stryker counter signal the Austrian school all the time, and he says, "We've been following the Austrian school of economics, and this is exactly what it's got us to." But like, we really haven't been following it at all. Like, nobody in government wants to follow it. And nobody in business wants to follow it because what it means is literally less money being handed out to them.
Because
Well,
if you've got a job in government right now, you you don't want to admit that there's something that can be improved. If you've made it to any like higher echelon of government by this point, you're already raking in so much cash.
yeah, I mean, there's an incentive right there to like, keep that system from dying, right? You want to keep promoting that system. That, there's no teachers union that wants to disintegrate and stop themselves from growing, right? They only want to expand teachers because the more that they expand teachers, the more dues that they could get, right? So they have an incentive to increase compared to decrease, right? And to have legislative laws to, not allow teachers to get fired because it's an incentive that's there for them, right? That they could keep growing, they could keep getting more dues, right? And that comes off of the taxpayer dime. And with Stryker, for example, I mean, I've had this debate with Stryker. You know, uh, he gets his words conflated. Like he'll think that like the current system is kind of like capitalism, and it's crony capitalism in a sense. I understand where his sentiment comes from on a lot of things, but I think a lot of his ideas are kind of misguided. And he'll say something like, "Oh, the government knows how to keep inflation in check," and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
the reason why they use inflation
No.
is because they're able to get the money firsthand and use it. As soon as you get that money, you get it at face value. It's when it goes into the economy, the later coffers, the later stages in the economy, that's when the prices start to rise on goods and services.
Yeah, his everyone knows Stryker's economics are a little hokey.
Well, I kind of do agree with him about the issue with capitalism that essentially it will always break down to crony capitalism because a big business big enough will always want to use state power to keep out their competition. And I'm not really sure how there would be a way to stop that because, you know, comp- problem with capitalism is the businesses and the corporations don't actually want it. They don't want competition. They want to eliminate their competition. They end up trying to lobby the state to do it for them.
I'm supposed to be doing a stream with a top kick from Heel Turn pretty soon, either this weekend or next weekend. But he's got we should have him on one day, and we should have I need to do a stream one day where we just delve into like economics heavy because we always kind of touch on it, but the no shit, what was I saying? Uh
You were saying Top Tech, something about Top Tech
yeah,
and
yeah,
economic.
I was gonna say he's got sorry, thanks for reminding me. He's got some really good alternative theories. We did one stream, one of my first streams, we were talking about ways we would like if we could be king for a day, what was a law you would want to pass? And he's got some really interesting theories and ideas for like alternative models of government. And yeah, we don't have true capitalism right now, but we don't have it's kind of funny to say. I think that a truer form of capitalism could almost exist under a more authoritative government, if that makes any sense. But he's got
Well,
go ahead.
no. Go ahead. You were going to finish the thought there. My bad. I'm sorry. I thought you were
The
done.
the last thing I was gonna say is that he's got ideas and other people have proposed similar ones that like say you had a company here in America and that company was doing gangbusters, made a ton of fucking money, and you've got a CEO, you've got shareholders, all the like. Um, the only thing that would like bar you from making profits and keeping money is like you would have some sort of legislation excuse me, legislation on the books saying that you're um, saying that the CEO could not make more than 1,000 times the lowest paid employee, some sort of metric like that, where it was capped to where your CEO would have an incentive to maintain that relationship and the status of the company and so on and so forth.
Well, the one issue that I've had, and I've had a hard time explaining myself, and this is these are some things that I have problems with libertarianism in the ANCAP sense, is one of power, and one of, for example, like a historical example would be Jacob Schiff. Jacob Schiff, from what I've seen, seems like he had made his money, through the free market, right? He railways, et cetera, within nation, doing business. With other nations, and he was actually one of the primary funders of the Bolshevik Revolution. He gave about $20 million, which in return, when they had raped and pillaged Russia, they deposited 600 million rubles to his account. Which gives him an unfair advantage compared to his competition. Right? Like if I just receive a whole boatload of money from Russia. So that's one of the things that I've seen that I don't think Austrian School of Economics or anything could resolve. And it's one of the ones that I've been trying to think in my head. How would a nation, for example, stop someone from like Jacob Schiff from doing something like that, right? Without extraditing him or something. That's one question that I still have yet to answer.
Yeah, and I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go on, Raphael.
Yeah, I think another problem is that the Austrian school has just the belief that people are solely motivated by profit. That's kind of where all of the models kind of formulate around. But we see like people like Jacob Schiff after promoting communism in Soviet Union. That's not really good for him, right? In his bottom line, but he was more concerned about concentrating power within a certain tribe of people.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I've come to realize is that it's a little bit tough. Like for example, like with you could even look at it in a modern example, George Soros, right? George Soros is God knows where, right? And he's using Antifa as a proxy here to destabilize this. And through the Open Society Foundation, not just this nation, many other nations, right? And this is the type of behavior, and how do we punish these type of people, right? I think the only thing that I could come to some sort of idea would be Hoppe is the closest one. Hoppe having the idea of physically removing communists and socialists out of your social order. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I in my opinion, I just think that you just cannot have that certain tribe a part of your society, because it seems that everything that they don't play by the rules, right? In the sense that everybody else does, right? Everybody plays by these some sort of like chess, right? Everybody plays by these rules, but these people just like breaking the rules. And this is what their book teaches them. The Talmud teaches them to break these rules, and it's good to break these rules on these people, because you're tricking them, and trickery is a good thing, and all this type of behavior. I don't think you would want that in your society. Anybody would want that in their society.
Yeah, and they're even willing to lose money in the short term to have a long term goal. So they're not really motivated by profit, which kind of causes other problems too.
Yeah. I mean, Summer Redstone and people like that. I mean, how can you deny the fact that most of these media companies, and not just those media companies, and media companies in all over the world, right? Like I've recently found this out, that the first person to bring a motion picture to Cuba was actually a Jew named Mauricio Soriano, and you just realize that this happens everywhere in every single nation almost.
Dude, it's
Go ahead.
You know what it's starting to remind me of, man? Do you know that and it's even more fucked up because that some of the original stories for now we're going to this obscure shit. Some of the stories for Dracula were originally inspired by like Talmudic blood libels. Did you ever hear that?
No, I had no idea about that. I had no. It makes sense, kind of though, right? I mean, there is a portion of that group that definitely that has practiced, very sick rituals, right?
Yeah, well, man, it's just bizarre. Like, okay, so you just mentioning the uh it's funny we were talking about Bolshevik stuff and Peter Schiff just before that, but yeah, the so many things, directions I want to go with it. But okay, so you take something like that guy in Cuba, and it's just the old adage. Tell me, I don't know if I'm alone here. It starts to blow my mind when people use the meme every single time, and it's like, oh, every single time. When it really is every single time, you almost have to like pinch yourself and be like, okay, hold on, am I really? Uh, it's almost like pinching yourself to make sure you're not NPCing out on the JQ, you know? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, I always just get the coincidence detector from my Google browser, so I know for sure when I'm reading
You
an
talking
article.
about you talking about the Cantwell test?
Well, I don't think he created the browser, but it's very useful.
No. I'm saying the Roman was reminding me of this. The Cantwell test is when you're not sure if a name is Jewish or not. Go to Google and type in rabbi and then whatever the name is, and if you get a bunch of hits, chances are it's a nose. But
Oh yeah, that I guess that works too. I
it's
should
funny
try that.
the mention
Yeah.
of like the first guy to bring a motion picture to Cuba, just all the same stuff and spotting Chosenites. It
Oh yeah,
it
that was
start
my first JQ.
it reminds me of it. I rewatched one of my favorite movies, Blade, the other night, and I swear everything except for the actual blood sucking just makes so much sense. Do you remember the movie Blade, how they would have like these little hidden tattoos on them, meaning that they weren't if they weren't a vampire but they were a human, it meant they were owned by a vampire.
I haven't seen that movie, so I wouldn't know.
It's been a
Oh,
while since I watched that, so I mean, I do know that like a vampire appears like very. It's kind of like it reminds me kind of what's similar, right? Like the people you're around, you don't know, like what I mean. Uh, there's times that you're kind of like, is this person this type of tribe? And sometimes you confirm it, sometimes you don't. It's kind of
yeah. But uh yeah. Well, guys, I don't know if you had any other streams planned coming up, but I wanted to make this one kind of short and sweet tonight since it was kind of on the fly. But when I say I'm gonna, it's at least important to me to get a stream going and at least put one out every week. You know, just to get the dialogue out there and lay it down. But I don't know, Dan. Were you planning on doing any others tonight? I
no,
know
no.
some.
I'm completely no.
Okay, I know you got man. I know some nights you'll line them up like gangbusters, man. Like 3, 4 in a row.
Yeah, no, I enjoy doing this. Like, I enjoy having these discussions. You don't really have these discussions much in your immediate circle in your life. So, when you have these conversations, I think that they're great to have, and I think they're epic.
Yeah. All
Yeah, I
right.
think it's kind of isolating because when you have these beliefs, you can't really let anybody know around you, not even your your own family.
Man, I've been blessed in that I've gotten to bring in some of my family on this. I don't know. That very few members of my family, but yeah, it's one of my buddies posted another meme the other day, and I think he made the meme off of what um he took the concept from another meme. I think it was a George Lincoln Rockwell quote with a picture of him and, the party from back in the day. And it was the concept was essentially fight for what you love even if it hates you for it. And I don't know, man. I think today I really hit a wall kind of today, like personally, not like not even like a wall where it was like, anxiety or uh anger or I don't know. It's been in the movement. I don't know about you, but I think I've talked to Dan about this a little bit, and that some days in the movement, if you let it, you'll start thinking about all the stuff in the news, and you'll see all the subversion and all the things that are just stacked against people as far as wanting to have just a regular open dialogue, and you're not even allowed to have that. You can't. You're waiting for your to get blocked off Twitter or Facebook or some stranger to just come out of the woodwork and try and ruin your life or dox you or whatever. And I don't know. Just sharing with you guys, my wall today was not even. It wasn't that I was worried about getting doxxed. I wasn't mad. I wasn't like getting enraged over the usual news arguments. It was almost just like I was just tired. I was like, all right, let's see if we can spread just a little bit of awareness today. And just I don't know. Not that it's supposed to be a gratifying thing, but trying to spread awareness is I think you guys can agree it is kind of thankless sometimes.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that trying to red pill, I guess, my immediate family. It's some people don't have the same passion as we do, right? Like as we do for these certain topics, right? And some people don't even know the information that's out there, and then they don't even go out to see it, right? For example, most I'd say Cuban Americans, they don't even know the Jewish influences. They just think Castro's the evil man, that guy's the bad guy, but they don't know the prehistory towards it, right? Like they don't know the understanding of the arrival of Fabio Grobard in 1924 and the Hebrew cultural organizations that helped spring the Communist Party in Cuba. They don't understand this, and they don't understand the names of the others that were involved too, that were from that specific tribe, such as Joska Grinsberg, Felix Hervich, Carol Wasserman, Ricardo Lobo. All these names are unknown to them, and it's kind of sober. It's kind of it's a little bit sad that they don't know this, but I know that information, and my job is to get this information out to people so they know the truth.
Yeah, I'm just kind of surprised when the Communist Party USA came about that we even allowed it to come about. It was literally started by the Kremlin.
Yeah, it did, and they actually instituted the international wave of communism in 1919, and it was a guy named Mikhail Gruzenberg, which had the duty of also looking over Latin America. And it was actually a communist from America named Charles Shipman and a Cuban anarchist named Marcelo Salinas, who actually started the conceptions of a socialist party in Cuba. So this is that goes like everybody just thinks that 1959, the revolution that happened at Castro. No, this is things that have taken time and methodically thought out, and not just in Cuba, in Russia as well. in the United States as well. Trotsky was from New York, was a tailor there. This is all methodical and planned and with malicious intent. Jacob Schiff, being one of the biggest bankers in the world, this all it all comes together in this perfect piece, this perfect puzzle in a sense.
Yeah, that's the perfect that's the perfect way of describing it, and it's funny because it's ironic that what we were talking about is it's hard enough to try and red pill your immediate family when there are people who are related to you and people who like share your own blood, and then you uh start to bring in any kind of racial component, and then you get to enjoy the real fun, especially if you're white. um if you want to have any kind of racial component or identity, then you open up a can of worms like that. But it's kind of funny that what you were saying about the big picture is, well, the only way to fight this right now, uh like we've gone over before, is um it does need to be approached. We need to be race realist. We need to acknowledge and embrace our own alliances among our own races, obviously. But we also need to realize that um, they're actually fun. Strangely enough, ironically, there is a little bit of strength in the diversity, because we need to realize that nationalism benefits all people, and that the dissolution of nationalism has been what the Jews used to attack everyone, man, to get us all, the Cubans, the Russians, Ukrainians, Western Europeans, Americans. They've ruined us all in so many ways. And the only way, it's funny that they've done it on an international level to so many people by using a doctrine of non-identity.
Yeah, that's a strategy they use. They want to have a multicultural society so they don't stand out, right? That's one of the key things that they do.
Yeah, originally it was supposed to be with the Soviet Union. Supposed to be two countries, the Soviet Union and Israel, and Jerusalem was supposed to be the capital of the world.
Yeah, I always wondered why, realistically, it always was kind of funny to me that, like, because the Jews, the Zionist Jews and the Bolsheviks, they didn't essentially like stay in Russia once they secured the Balfour Declaration, got Israel all set up. They were all pretty much out of there within next couple generations. But the I had one more thing. That's another thing I was reading over yesterday that I'd never really understood, that I'd pieced together. Um, I couldn't really ever figure out how, like, what the connection to the KGB and the Frankfurt School was. And I think someone was telling me the other day that it was the Frankfurt School, because the Frankfurt School that gets blamed for all the Bolshevik and communist uh, doctrines, and the Solinsky School, all those other great things. They originated in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany. That's why it's called the Frankfurt School. And I didn't know that the Frankfurt School was funded by communists, and so the that's the move they were trying to make to essentially, because if the Bolsheviks could have done it, they would have taken Germany from the inside without firing a single shot. If they could have done that, that would have been preferable to them. But Hitler kind of put a damper on those plans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to know that most of those most of all those revolutions that happened in Europe, and Cuba, the United States is currently still going on. They're all you could all trace back to an origin of a group, and it's just it's I come to the point already to think that it's just you can't live with these people. You just can't. It's either them or us at this point.
Well, they did have a successful revolution in Germany and Bavaria. They set up a Bavarian Soviet Republic for like a very short while. Have you ever heard of that? I think it was only for like 2 months, though.
No, that sounds interesting though. Sounds like I bet there's a neat documentary on that somewhere.
Yeah, it was literally after the end of World War One. The staged a revolution in Bavaria, overtook it. The local government turned it into a Soviet republic. The German army put it down, dissolved the republic. But there's a lot of communist agitation in Germany at the time, which is one of the reasons why the Nazi Germany came into power.
Yeah, and the Frankfurt School ended up fleeing over here, and not only on top of that, but people like Magnus Hirschfeld, who was one of the first guys to actually do like tranny assignments in Germany, actually fled over here too. This is where you find the origins of all this stuff.
Yeah, they that's one of my favorite things to tell people. So I'll for those of you who don't know, I usually open the stream and I usually talk a little bit about what's going on in the I'm currently I'm a fan of saying I'm currently enrolled in a Marxist institution trying to finish my finance degree against my will. I say that in jest because there's Marxism that goes along with not only school. There's little bits of Marxism they force down your throats in all parts of the world, even if you are just going to punching a card at a 9 to 5. But one of the things I usually touch on at the beginning is what I call today in Marxism, and I talk about little subtle talking points my professors use to try and pass over their little bits of I don't know what to call them. That they're lies. That they're bold-faced lies. But I was trying to come up with a more eloquent way of putting it. So every week I go over something a professor said that is not accurate or ingrained with a bunch of Marxist inflection. So this week, one of the funny this week my history professor actually managed to go the whole week without saying something entirely stupid. But he still let one slip, and it was oh god, he was talking about these the election of Harry Truman. And so it was after World War II. And so pretty much it was this four-way election between two guys who were really racist and two guys who were not so racist. Essentially, long story short. But the states that the very I can't remember this guy. This guy had a Strom Thurgood Thrombud. I don't know. He won 4 states in the South, and he was the first states' rights candidate. And so this is just a small example of something a professor will say that is inaccurate, and it'll shape the opinion of a younger student. And he tried to say that the right he said that people who claim to want to defend states' rights are just defending their right to be racist. To which I responded to him. Me and another kid in the class. It's funny because there was an 18-year-old kid who looked at me and like looked at the professor, and we were like, you know, we'll call them out on stuff that's easy to call them out on, but we pick and choose our battles. So I raised my hand and I said, well, I was like, you mean that in the connotation for what it was back then, he was trying to use it as a validation for being racist. And I said that can't be the state's rights to be racist, because the 1965 Civil Rights Act obviously wasn't passed in 1948. And so uh, I don't know. I had a neat little discussion with him. I said our right to be racist, actually, there is nothing actually in our Constitution that says you can't be racist, quote unquote. And it's not like saying you have to pitch that idea to people, but uh I don't know. It's just really weird the way they teach people about what they deem as rights, quote unquote. Um so I s- man, I'm sorry. I'm butchering this talking point, but I was trying to pitch the idea to them that the only legislation in this country as it exists right now that can affect you negatively for being racist is that 65 Civil Rights Act, which essentially all that does is obligate you into um non you cannot disassociate in any kind of economic capacity. That's all I pretty much wanted to pitch to them.
Well, they have to always associate everything with racism, right? Like everything, like I mean, even things that just aren't even racial, they always have to add some sort of racial component to everything. That bothers me about them. You know, like even if it's things that are just like a presidential race or whatever the case, they always have to inject that to every single script. I mean, the Civil War is because we were racist against the blacks that were the slavery and all this stuff. It's always some sort of racial component that the left always wants to make everything in their politics about, right? Like even in history, they even go and they won't even explain to you like the real inner workings of history. What these teachers do is they simply just read off of a textbook, and because they know this certain textbook, they believe they know history. Don't go out and actually read other books or other opinions on history. They just go by that textbook version of it.
They haven't always been about. I think this is a pretty recent phenomenon where they're all about race. Before it was always about the working class, the poor, downtrodden, making sure everybody has a sufficient living standards.
I know, right? I've been saying that not exactly Generation Z, but what just a couple years older than Generation Z is where they started making race a big deal again. Because it's weird, because I'm generation I guess Gen Y, I guess it is. Like a millennial Gen Y. So, but our generation was not overly concerned with race. They slipped it in after our generation. Like right after 30-year-old boomer.
Well, I think race started playing a big factor, a huge factor in the '60s, right? Like after that was passed. So when it was when the poor and the downtrodden and the fall of communism and the failures of communism and the massacres of communism, they had to switch it up. They had to move to something else. So I think the racial component was definitely one, and democracy too. They always talk about, even adding to the racial component, they always talk about democracy being, our democracy's like in shambles because of Donald Trump or something like that. That's another area where they cling on to too. So it's democracy and it's the racial component too. And it's actually the bridge between the liberal left and the neoconservatives, because the neoconservatives are the ones that talk about democracy being safe around the world. So that's the bridge that comes together and how they connect to each other.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I just can't really figure. Sorry, I was looking at I was monitoring the Rad Cap show, and they like got to show it, I guess, in the middle of it. So I was
Really?
yeah, not show it. I think they had to restart, but I got distracted.
It happens. It happens to them constantly.
No, well, I guess I don't know if they had a technical difficulty, but yeah, the thing about the racial component, it's not even that it made a resurgence. It's that it should have never stopped being a thing. My own history professor was mentioning. He said, oh God, what was he saying? He was talking about. He pretty much admits. So all through history, you have okay. So they free the slaves, right? Or pass the 13th Amendment, which, if you want to have a which there's another interesting conversation to be had about that, in that that didn't free the slaves. It just changed the rules on how you made slaves and who could be made slaves. So I'm gonna speed through this point. So you have 13th Amendment, blacks freed, and then you've got to pass all these other fucking amendments to make sure they can vote. They're considered citizens, which honestly, those reconstructive amendments were, oh man, just I don't know. It's like they wrote them, they drafted them up and passed them, and just number one, they should have never extended property rights to anyone in this country who was not a property owner. I think so many problems would have just been circumvented with that. Um, but anyways, the the Civil War, like all history professors will admit this. You had um predominantly Western European and British and Irish immigrants in the industrialized North who had to be drafted because they did not want to go and fight a war uh, for some slaves who they would end up having to fight for jobs anyways immediately after the war. After that, you have uh, you know history goes on. You have Jim Crow laws, and then you have uh, it, black people serving in the armed forces during like World War II. And so this is just one example. History professor was referencing how the racist uh, candidate from South Carolina who won 4 states running against President or incumbent President Truman. What he did to win the black vote, because blacks did have the right to vote around at this time. What he did was he fully integrated the military to further embolden the black vote to make sure he could beat this Thrombgood guy in this election. So my own history professor, who virtue signals and um, is constantly letting everyone know how much of a racist he is not, is going on and on about this guy. And so this is just the hypocrisy of liberals. This is just what does not make sense about them. Is he openly admits that Harry Truman did not give a shit about blacks enough to integrate them before an election, but he's a good guy because he decided to weaponize them, to use them as a partisan issue to win the black vote, and forcefully fully integrate the United States military, which, go figure, fucking infuriated already enlisted service members. So, like, how do people not see this just history of and it's all politicians, but this history, the democratic legacy of just using black people as this political weapon, and they still can't figure it the fuck out. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, they have the lowest, IQs for a reason, right? And meaning, they have the least intelligence, meaning that they're probably going to be a lot more controllable, right? I mean, that's the way that I see it. They're gonna be a lot more controllable than 100 IQ white man is going to be, right?
You seen that? I saw a meme yesterday, and it was making fun of wereabouts and gnat socks, like what specifically white gnat socks, and it was like a piece of paper with a test. It said 106 IQ, genetic superiority confirmed,
Yeah.
and making fun of the average.
You would think. I mean, that's what kind of made me stop thinking these leftist ideas about equality. Like this really extreme religious devotion to egalitarianism. That we have all these laws in place. We have tons of affirmative action programs. Uh, Lots of pressure being put on from, like, if you watch MTV, it, it's not even about music videos anymore. It's about social justice and about creating a why creating equality amongst races. And uh, how do people not notice all these programs out here and there's no equality of the races? That even with all this massive help, that there's not on the same level playing field as everybody else. Well, not level playing field, but they're not accomplished as much as everybody else at the same level. It's like they're
Yeah,
not
it's
going to
different.
accept that there's just differences, no matter what programs are implemented.
Yeah, they fall into the narrative of believing that everybody could just be the same. That this group of people and this group of people, they're exactly the same. Even though there is completely. I mean, I went to this is just a. I went to New York about a year ago, and I went to I believe it's the Museum of Natural Sciences, I believe it's called. And so I went into the European section, and it's beautiful. You have all these marble statues that that you can like tell that someone took years of low time preference behavior to master and come up with these type of sculptures of like sculpting the eyes, the mouth, the pelvic area, everything. And so, and this is thousands of years, right, that we're looking at, right? So then I went into the African section, right? And there's spears, daggers, and there's actually photos. Like in the European section, there's no photos because this is hundreds and thousands, like thousands of years. But in the African section, there's photos. And their mask, for example, it looks like a mask that could be done by like a third grader or a second grader, right? That it doesn't take that long to produce this type of stuff. Like a child could produce this stuff. And this if you ever have a chance, and I would advise people ever get a chance to go over there, unless they've completely made it into a leftist hellhole already, you could see the stark difference in those two sections.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Where did you say this is again?
Oh, it's in New York. I believe it's called the Museum of Natural Sciences. I believe it. I'm not sure, but it's basically a museum, and it goes into or the Museum of Natural History, something. It's one of the big museums in New York, and it goes. There's a European section and there's an African section. And you look at the African section, they have these masks that look like they could be done by third, fourth, fifth graders. And when you go into the European section, you have these paintings, these sculptures. It's just incredible.
It's funny because they I mean, it's funny because they have Africa actually does have its own geniuses. Like everybody always thinks we just shit on them, but like they have their own geniuses just about at the same rate everybody else does. they're they're like and we're not talking about like the average bell curve. We're talking about like every generation has natural elites. It's like Hans Hermann Hoppe says. Not every generation, every race of people, essentially, every society.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely. And one of the things, like you said, Hoppe, he does is he deconstructs democracy. That democracy is basically the lowest level of society, right? Like society has these natural aristocrats and people that would always naturally ascend to the top, and democracy is the complete reversal of that, right? The bottom of the barrel are deciding who should be the leaders, and that's not a good system. And I believe I found the name of the museum, but I believe it's called the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The one that I went to.
Yeah, that's awesome. You ever go to the you ever make your way up to the Smithsonian?
No, I wanted to go, but we never got to. I know they have like all those like dinosaur findings and all that stuff there, right?
Oh, dude. Well, the Smithsonian, man, it's so huge. There's like I want to say there's 4 or 5 museums. One of them's like technology. One of them's like is art, like just works of art from all over the world, and they're in DC and they're all free. Um, but yeah, I love museums. I never got to do I still
Yeah, I
haven't
got to
made
check it out one day. I gotta go when I get a chance. Check it out.
yeah, I always want to go to I've never done a New York trip. I've flown out of New York. I've flown out of well, I guess not New York, but Newark. They're like it's funny. You fly into one and the other one seems like you can throw a baseball to it.
Oh yeah, and it's a lot cheaper.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So but I've never done a New York trip, but I definitely want to get up there. It could never live there, but I definitely want to get up there and see the museums and you know, bastion of
It,
Western Civ.
I would not want to live there at all. I mean, have you ever heard of John Rocker by any chance?
John Rocker. It sounds familiar.
He was a baseball player that said like this controversial quote about New York. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I never heard it.
So,
Well,
and to me, it's literally like the perfect like. Let me see if I could find it because it's exactly what I thought I was in New York. It's exactly like that multicultural paradigm. Because he got in trouble for saying that that this is what New York was, and I'm trying to find that quote just so I could read it. Beyond that, I mean, I would never live there. That museum, unless because I'm scared that they're gonna notice the European difference within and the African difference, right? And that they're going to just complete section, or they're going to add some to the African section. That's what I'm scared of.
what do you think's gonna happen? Sorry, you cut out a little bit there.
Oh, that they're just gonna completely disrupt the European section, or they're going to inflate the accomplishments of the African section.
Oh yeah. Well, did you see dude, there's a it's freaking bizarre. There's old Weimar uh propaganda cartoons. I don't know what it's related, but it's not the direction I was going to go. There's old propaganda cartoons from Weimar Germany where they're talking about demographics being shifted, and it's like a comic of like some black people dressed up like French people. So the thing is that it's black people who have uh grown up to think that they're French, and they're looking at actual white French people in in like a zoo exhibit, like acting all civilized and stuff. And
No, never seen it.
uh, oh, it's well, all it is it's just a propaganda cartoon from 30s Germany, and it's bizarre how accurate it is. But
Oh yeah.
it's once you see these people's agenda, man, it's not complicated. They benefit from the stupid people. If they could turn us all into and they've pretty much almost already done it, man. That's why that's why this shit is so stressful. Is we're already pretty much an idiocracy. If we That's
Yeah.
why I think we do this right now is um like honestly, like I don't think it would not surprise me if you're also of the school of thought. Dude, we may already like social scientists might look back at these conversations we're having now and there will be a little blurb somewhere in a history textbook about the Charlottesville rally and about how whites got cognizant for like a blip of a second. But realistically, in the grand scheme of history, like if you were to just like let's just say Zog fucking wins tomorrow. We lose the midterms. Blue wave in November. Trump gets impeached. Borders open, floodgates, and everything is just fucked. Let's just say what accelerationist is what I think they call him on Cantwell.
Yeah,
accelerationist.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it's
so
an NRX idea. Accelerationism.
Yeah, and the libertarians have another one. They call it collapsitarianism. And so honestly, if that happened tomorrow, or if in November, blue wave, borders open, Trump impeached, fuck it. Let's say he gets assassinated, then whatever. We would, number one, we wouldn't be surprised. We'd know that we already had the kind of cards stacked against us. But realistically, if in this dystopian nightmare I'm describing and trying not to beat it to death, if that happened, there would be a little blip in a history book somewhere about, oh, well, there was a short emergence of white nationalist movements, and then it turned out the circumstances were already stacked so heavily against them they never had a chance to win. Like, realistically, especially me as a Christian, as a person of faith, in that, half of Christians are just, waiting on the world to end any day anyways. But I'm not optimistic, but if it was all for naught, if we didn't have it, I wouldn't be surprised. Historians could very easily look at us like that goofy cartoon I'm describing from Weimar Germany. And they would look at it and be like, oh yeah, well, fucking, I see where they fucked up here. It was that 1965 immigration reform, and that Civil Rights Act didn't help either. And they'd look at it like they would look at Rome, and they'd be like, yeah, well, shit. Well, now we know why this country only lasted 200 years and some change.
Yeah, no, it's like an analysis of the history, like to kind of understand what happened. Oh, by the way, I found the quote.
Go on, man.
So this is John Rocker. He was a baseball player. I believe it was the Atlanta Braves, and he was referring to a Sports Illustrated interview in 1999. They asked him on ever playing for the New York Yankees. So, quote, he says, "I would retire first. It's the most hectic, nerve-wracking city. Imagine having to take the number 7 train to the ballpark, looking like you're riding through Beirut, next to some kid with purple hair, next to some queer with AIDS, right next to some dude who just got out of jail for the 4th time, right next to some 20-year-old with 4 kids. It's depressing."
What was this guy's name?
John Rocker. Now, there's another one. Hold on. There's more of this stuff. He has another quote. And then he talks about New York City itself. "The biggest thing I don't like about New York are the foreigners. I'm not a very big fan of foreigners. You can walk an entire block in Times Square and not hear anybody speaking English. Asians and Koreans and Vietnamese and Indians and Russians and Spanish people and everything out there. How the hell did they get in this country? Now
And
there's
that's the
another
funny.
one. There's another one. I'm sorry. There's the one
Go
of the
ahead.
Mets. He talks about the Mets fans. And this one he says, nowhere else in the country do you spit at do people spit at you, throw bottles at you, throw quarters at you, throw batteries at you, and say, hey, I did your mother like what degenerates they were, and they proved me right just by saying something. I could make them mad enough to go home and slap their moms. This guy's the fucking best.
That's great. You know who he reminds me of? You ever heard of Bobby Fischer?
Yes, Bobby Fischer, the chess player, world champ. World yeah.
What the hell is wrong with him? You know, if you started winning a lot of chess games, maybe people come up to you and they're not your friend no more.
Bobby Fischer has some great quotes, like incredible. Like he was.
They need to be stopped.
Oh, that guy was based as fuck.
Bobby Fischer's that dude.
Yeah, look, there's a quote from him that I have. America is totally under control of the Jews. You know, I mean, look at what they're doing in Yugoslavia. The Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense are dirty Jews.
Hey, when did you mention this? I mean, what year?
Oh, I don't know what year, but these are quotes that are attributed to him. They are subhuman. They are scum of the earth. When you talk about Jews, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel of humanity.
Yeah. Jews are not fighters. They have miserable bodies. They're like cunning rats.
Yeah, this guy was pretty.
Movie about that guy.
That guy was pretty based. Well, the thing is, like, imagine if we had movies that were actually like right-wing movies. It would be a pretty awesome movie. But since it would be like, you know, in the control of Jews, it'd be like the fucking worst movie ever.
Dude, I hope one day. Well, one day, right?
One day when we're in power.
Man, yeah. Speaking of which, I guess we're hitting about hour 45, so we'll tie it off here, and I'll talk about well, the this yeah, my last couple episodes and my technical difficulties, and I don't know, man. I was jabbing with Raphael at the beginning. Anyone who's watching this, I am just doing this for fun. It is all about just getting the dialogue out there. I'm the first person to admit I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing on this, but you know, I'm getting there. The words are getting put up on the interwebs, and you know, maybe one day when I get a little more tech savvy, I'll be able to polish up the channel and put out a little bit more put out a little bit more diverse content in the future. But as of right now, it's just an experiment, and anybody who finds their way here, I'm always trying to find new people to stream with. I'm always trying to branch out, and I'm a big fan of saying I like to make the stream normie friendly. So if it's the JQ, economics, nationalism, or something uh, else that can maybe be explained or elaborated on, um, I'm trying to figure out uh, if there might be a you know, maybe a niche out there for a market. I was actually just on man, I don't know how to say it very well. Verbo Tempestras. Tempestras. I don't know if I said that right. But I was on there the other night, and we were going back and forth talking about I've got some kind of out there ideas, Dan. We floated the idea of okay, so you've heard of MGTOW, right? Men going their own way.
Yeah, who hasn't heard of MGTOW?
Yeah, I hadn't until actually pretty recently, just a couple months. I would read it, but it's not something I cared enough to look into. And so we were floating the idea, bouncing it around of I like to say that there's a lot of young men in the movement who they get attracted to MGTOW. This is what I said on Verbo Temstress is that a lot of these men well, essentially guys not being 100% amazing with girls in their 20s or having some not having it all figured out with women in your 20s is not it's not unheard of. It's actually pretty much the norm for most guys in their 20s. So in a age where we have social media stimulation up the wazoo, it's not surprising to me that a bunch of these guys got together and made a little whatever men going their own way. Anytime I hear about it, anytime someone talks about it, tries to explain it to me, it sounds depressing. It sounds like what we would call uh well it, it was called an AFC back in the day. It was called an average frustrated chump, an AFC. And so what their problem is they're wanting to get into this men going their own way. They're tired of the women not being women, and so they don't really see a lot of point into dating and developing this shit. And so I floated the idea of maybe there's a school of thought or like a service for giving maybe pickup advice in a trad way. I don't know. I bounced this off of them because it was funny to say out loud. But I asked Rory if he thought that maybe there might be a way to do pickup advice and advice for dating in a way that the movement could get behind that wasn't like degenerative, if that makes sense to you guys at all.
Yeah, there's definitely a market not being met there because all the pickup artists today, well, Bruce B kind of changed, but he pretty much shut down and stopped his website, which is unfortunate. But we need.
Well, go
I'm
on.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, we need a pickup artist type of thing that's more focused on like getting married, having children, not just like trying to go to as many nightclubs and have sex with many different girls that you want. Advice on what countries to travel to so you can sleep with their women. You know, something that's more focused on a socially constructive, not destructive.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's kind of funny because I know people in in my social circles that it's kind of like every time they get laid or whatever, they high five it and all this stuff, and in this day and age, it's so easy to get to get laid. It just is. I mean, most women, they give it up pretty easily, right? Um, like if, for example, if they were doing this like in the 1930s, 40s, shit, you would be like the man. But like nowadays, it's not really like you're the man. It's just this is the norm, right?
Yeah, I mean, back then, like women really only had sex after they were getting married because there was no such thing as birth control back then. It was very risky for them. So if you're able to convince them to have sex with you without being married, that's a big accomplishment. But
Exactly.
people are acting like it's really difficult to get women. I mean, I guess when you're like a young teenager and you really don't know anything about women because you haven't really had the experiences with them, yeah, it can seem like it's impossible, but it really isn't that tough.
No, it
Well,
isn't at all. I see it very, very simple. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Memphis.
oh no, well, that's the only thing I was thinking about introducing. It's okay, here's the thing, is there's not necessarily anything I'm going to bring to the table that they can't get from other online stuff, but it's just this thing I keep on hearing about, and I'm always trying to figure out what I can bring to the movement. Um, that's all I pretty much do. Like I said, I've told you I don't stream for vanity. I don't care if I have a million subscribers tomorrow. I really don't. I'd like to maybe make a couple friends, and if if there's a group of guys out there who really are confused about now, I'll admit I understand that the quality of woman available out there today, it's not abundant, but I think we can open the door to dialogue and maybe put some feelers out there for people who um not only are feeling the sentiments of the MGTOW crowd, but also maybe because technology has taken away so much of our social conditioning, and by social conditioning, I mean the good social conditioning that you're able to walk up to a girl, introduce yourself, and shake her hand or uh, wave or wink or something and do something to that effect without being weird, successfully, and not get arrested. That's essentially all pickup is trying to initiate and maintain contact without with reciprocus and have it be reciprocated. And I think there could be I don't know if someone said that they thought there was a demand for that. I would be interested in maybe developing some content for people like that.
Well, I think the main issue is it doesn't matter how many books you read or how many theory that you read online or watching videos on how to do the pickup artist type of thing. It's just it's something that can't be taught. It's something that you just learn from experience. So I think in reality, what these people need is to have like a group in real life where they just go out to like a club and then they have some people to help them out, be their wingman, and then they just build experience just dealing with women because this just really isn't anything you're going to be learning from reading the book.
Yes.
I read all of Bruce's books, but the most things I learned just from going out talking to women, risking myself, talking to a random woman I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. And and from my experience is that the what I learned from dating women was the more dates that I went on, that's I always learned something new, right? I always learned something different. I think it comes more with experience than anything. That's probably I think the most the key factor is the experience that you gain from actually interacting with them, and I think it's unhealthy for a thing like MGTOW to advocate to, because it you're not going to interact with women as much, right? Because you're kind of abstaining from that type of interacting with women, right?
Yeah, MGTOW actually it's gotten worse. Back then, MGTOW would advocate men not dating and just going to prostitutes. Now, if you look at all the major MGTOW channels like Turd Flinging Monkey, Raging Golden Eagle, just to name a few, they're getting sponsored by these companies that make sex dolls and all different manners of sex toys. So instead of telling the viewers, "Hey, why don't you try prostitution?" No, just try these sex dolls, these $3,000 sex dolls
Jeez,
instead. And
I didn't
that's
know it was a movement like that.
yeah, these sex doll companies and sex toy companies are paying MGTOW channels, some of the big ones, the really major ones, paying them to sponsor their sex dolls and sex toys on their
Hmm.
channels.
Is one of them fleshlight? The fleshlight?
Well, I don't think one of them's Fleshlight. One of them's the Dollhouse. I know that's the major one. And the guy, Turd Finger Monkey, will have videos on how to take care of your doll, how to put makeup on it, how to dress it up. And
That's
I
so
think that's
degenerate.
just, even though I don't like prostitution, at least when you go to a prostitute, you're getting some interaction experience with women. Maybe not the right type of experience,
I
but
mean, that's true. I mean, can't knock that logic. But
yeah, I just noticed there's this big change in MGTOW where it was like just avoiding getting married, then it became avoiding dating, then it became avoiding women entirely, just go to sex dolls, virtual reality porn. I don't know where it's going next, but it's going nowhere good.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to an area of degeneracy, and that's what it seems like to me.
But yeah, guys, yeah, I can't remember what my point was tying off with the MGTOW crowd, but yeah, I'm always about coming up with ideas for episodes. So if we'll we'll have some in the future. So guys, I appreciate you guys coming on. Um, I hope we do it again in the future sometime, relatively soon. And you guys want to go ahead and plug your channel for anyone listening?
All right. Well, our channel is this hour has 56 minutes. It's a cool little live stream we do. Don't have a regular schedule as of yet. This weekend, this Saturday actually, we're gonna be streaming the Minority Report live from our channel. I'm gonna have Red Pill Shark from the Lost Three Asians, and I'm not so sure of who's gonna be guest, but it should be cool. Gonna have nationalists from South America, East Asia, from around the world. Nice idea we're coming up with.
Yeah, as soon as I'm off Zuck, I'll be sure to pitch that to people because gonna anytime I run into other nationalists, I always try to pitch their uh pitch whatever relative channels I have towards them because the more we network, the more we can spread the love around. But that being said, I thank you, gentlemen, for coming on, and everyone who took time out of your night to come and check out Rebel Faction. We appreciate you. Right? Y'all be easy. Memphis out.